a high paid salaried employee to starting your own startup where you don't have any money? How was that journey?
I had two big surprises when I started this journey, right? I started my journey off as an engineer, as a software person. That's what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to learn, build products there. And so I was coming from a mindset of if you build the product right, you build for the right customers, you solve the right problems, that's it, done. You can build a startup. And when I started this journey, I realized sales is a huge part of navigating the startup space. Yes, you talk to customers, yes, you build the product, but there's a different mindset and psychology that goes into selling the product and closing a deal.
For anybody who's watching this and wants to take that next leap or the next step or go ahead and start their own company, what would be one advice you would give them?
I think my biggest advice would be
Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast, Everything Product. We are back with an interesting episode today, talking to another entrepreneur who has taken a real world problem and built solutions using AI. We're sitting down with Gautam Madan, the co founder and CTO of Aura AI. Gautam has an incredible track record at companies like Twilio and PayPal, and now he's building game changing AI solutions to solve human resources problems at Aura AI. If you're someone who is starting a company or if you're someone who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur, this is a must watch for you guys. Let's get started. Hey Gautam, thank you so much for taking time to join the Everything Product team today. It's great to have you on the podcast. Let me start with a very simple one. How is everything going with you?
hey, Fani and Sid, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciated, what you've done for the community. I've listened to the podcast, some amazing guests, amazing speakers coming in. Kudos to you, to both of you for getting it to 100 plus episodes, I think. That's where you're all at. Yeah. That's an amazing achievement in itself. Yeah, I think things are going good. This is actually one of the busiest time for us, specifically in HR tech. That's where Aura is. That's where we sell, and yeah, I think customers is definitely like one thing that's keeping us busy. Then there's also we are fundraising, so that keeps us busy as well. So I think every day for a founder is like very different, and how things are going depends on how my day went. Today was a good day. I had good customer conversations, learned a ton. So, and we have a couple of things to look forward to with potential customers. So, all in all, good day today.
Can you talk a little bit more about what Aura is? Like, what is the problem?
Absolutely.
Like, how did you guys identify this problem and what are you guys trying to solve?
Man, that's like suddenly I'm back in the investor room trying to explain them what it is. Okay. So, see, like I'll address like what we are trying to do first, and then maybe go to like how we came across this problem. There's a ton of HR and processes that are out there that are very much data driven, take a lot of time to complete. And even after you spend a lot of time and energy, the output of that is very like perception based. To share an example, just to understand, just to come up with what I should be paying a certain employee at a certain level for a certain job function is an exercise that takes weeks to months for an organization to come up with. That's something that's defined as comp structure. And for that, you have to define a job structure, do the leveling guide. There's lots of things that happen. And in that process, it takes weeks and months for organizations to do. And of course, thousands to millions of dollars. What Aura is trying to do is bring efficiency and more accuracy in that process. And by way of that, enabling organizations to not spend thousands and millions of dollars and do it rather in a more inexpensive way, not use professional services, not use consultants, do a more product based approach, make it more accurate, make it more objective, and be able to do it and finish some of those tasks in minutes rather than weeks. So that's like the overall blanket of like what Aura is trying to do using AI, using some agentic workflows, latest technologies, and bringing productivity and efficiency gains there.
So you're saying the whole HR process in the cells, is it only focused on recruiting or is it everything that's related to HR?
So HR like has recruiting. There's another function of HR that's called total rewards. There's people analytics, and within total rewards, there's compensation, there's bonuses, equity, so many other things as well. And there's HRBP as well that's doing the collaboration with the business leaders. We eventually, the Aura's vision is to get into each and every facet of HR, bring and drive efficiency, productivity there, bring costs down massively, build that trust. But today, at this point, we are focused specifically on total rewards and a little bit on the recruiting function as well, not sourcing or anything, but total rewards. Once you define your comp structures, pay structure, the way you give out offer letters at what point for new candidates is dependent on that baseline foundation. So we will touch some part of recruiting as well. Today, only focused on total rewards function. Total rewards for the audience also is anything that revolves around your, paycheck, your bonus, sales commissions, incentives, the benefits, perks that you get from the company, base salary, of course, the equity, those are table stakes, things like that. Everything is blanketed under total rewards.
Awesome. And I also see, like, as you mentioned previously, I guess you also went through a lot of interviews, I guess, to understand some of these problems. And could you walk us through that path of like your process of reaching out to people, then filtering it down to a problem and then trying to go out and then taking that leap of faith to build a company?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been quite an interesting journey for both me and, our CEO as well, my co-founder, Purvi. Both of us don't come from a traditional HR background. I've been an engineering leader, so I've interacted with HR, but not worked their function. And she's been involved mostly with the finance team. And she's firsthand seen, how people cost influences the balance sheet. 70% of the balance sheet for majority of tech companies is people. How difficult that is to predict, how difficult it is to forecast, how difficult it is to analyze. And so we set out to just understand this problem. Like, why is managing people cost and now relating that to revenue and profit in an office of CFO? Why is that difficult? Just trying to understand that. So what we did was we went to LinkedIn, reached out, cold reached out, created message, iterated on certain messages, and did about 150, 200 conversations. And this was in a span of like 4 to 5 months. And what we learned was consistently the same. The reason they're not able to map this investment in people, how much should I invest in people to get that return, that ROI, is because was primarily like three things that were driving it. All the people systems that you see today, like HR, payroll, equity, recruiting, performance, all of these are like separate systems. They don't talk to each other. In enterprise companies, they sometimes have Workday and they'll buy modules, but that's expensive. In most organizations, that's not the case. And even if you want to, collect that data, massage it, put in Excel sheets, that's a time-consuming task. And then you have to generate insights out of these thousands of records of data, of historical people data, current data, and how it's flowing, how the performance is going. That itself takes more time. And by the time all of that has happened, you need a team of HR analysts to be doing that. And SMBs, small companies, medium companies, they can't afford HR analyst teams to just munch that data. And that's where we saw essentially Aura's opportunity. AI is advanced, technology is advanced. And both what me and my co-founder realized, it's not a domain specific knowledge problem. It's actually a data problem that can be solved with product, with technology. And that's how we landed on this whole problem.
Actually, before we go into all the AI things that you guys are doing, I also want to learn your journey, Gautam. So, how was your start? I know it's always exciting to start something new, but again, it's a very difficult journey to go from um, a high-paid, salaried employee to starting your own startup where
Yeah.
you don't have any money. So how was that journey?
Yeah. I think it depends. Like for me, the journey was exciting. It was nothing short of that. I absolutely loved every part of the journey that came along with it. Right from when I decided that, yes, I wanted to build my own company eventually someday, to now being part of that, building that every day has been more and more exciting and getting me closer and closer to creating value, something that I can bring into this world through an organization. And that's always been the idea. So it's been nothing short of exciting. It definitely has its ups and downs, especially when during building the company, there's ups and downs every day, not so much when you're working at a certain place. So yeah, it has its pros and cons, but I wouldn't trade anything for this experience. Yeah, I can talk definitely more about the journey, but I don't want to bore you with that.
Maybe one question that I want to ask is, what is the biggest surprise that you had?
Man, I think I had two big surprises when I started this journey, right? I started my journey off as an engineer, as a software person. That's what I wanted to do. That's where I wanted to learn, build products there. And so I was coming from a mindset of if you build the product right, you build for the right customer, you solve the right problems, that's it, done. You can build a startup. So I focused a lot of my energy on thinking about how to build right teams, thinking about how to build right products, right from when I was at SAP Labs, starting my career off to doing my master's, then at PayPal, then at Twilio. That's what my focus was. And when I started this journey, I realized sales is a huge part of navigating the startup space. Yes, you talk to customers, yes, you build the product, but there's a different mindset and psychology that goes into selling the product and closing a deal, especially a B2B deal. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises that I would say caught me off guard in the sense I didn't know on day zero, but I was fortunate to have a really good starting advisor, Arpit. And I mean, he's been de-risking a lot of those things for us and just making us learn. He's done it before. He's built a startup, sold a startup. And so, that surprise didn't turn out to be as big as I wouldn't have appreciated that big of surprise. I think that was definitely one. And second one was after I started it, I wish I would have started it sooner. There's just some things that you cannot learn from books, you cannot learn from listening to other people, like myself here. You just have to get started.
Cool. Let's jump into AI. So I know, like, as your name itself suggests, like Aura AI. So can you talk us a little bit more about how you guys are using AI to advance your products or give better experience for your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way we think about AI is primarily with two goals in mind. The first goal is definitely making it fully autonomous, and that's primarily with workflows. There are certain workflows in HR, in performance that we can automate. So that's one part of it. Can we make something fully autonomous with some human intervention, of course? And the second part is, can we give like a co-pilot like experience to our HR professionals, to our employees, to our business leaders, to C-level executives? And what are some of those things that they have questions about that we can address with the data that's there in their organization, data that we've seen across organizations, or data that's external? So I think these two are mainly the places that we are focusing our energies on AI, something around generative AI copilot, and then agentic workflows.
Actually, can you talk a little bit more about agentic workflows as well?
Yes, absolutely. So what part of like agentic workflow would love to know?
I actually have no clue. Maybe let's start with
Okay.
the basics. What that is, like, how does it help us?
Yeah. Yeah, the way like if anyone in the audience has seen like a Glean demo, it recently came out. I think that was a month ago, maybe. I think that's a really cool example of how an agentic AI workflow looks like. But imagine like in our situation in an HR world, you would want to, let's say you are like a 200 people company or 300 people company, and you are setting up your compensation structure for the first time. Compensation structure just means I need to define what job types of jobs I have in my organization. I need to figure out their descriptions. Then I need to make sure I have some leveling guides, L4, L5, L6, and then their pay bands as well, and where those employees. I want to make sure there's no pay disparities, bring some foundational structure. So today that's a huge process. It starts with, let's get the external data, let's look at that, make sure that's okay, that's right, that acts as a foundation for my comp structure. Then I define my job descriptions, I define other things, then I look at internal data. It takes weeks and months to do it, and there's certain knowledge that you need, domain expertise, to go through that process. In an agentic AI world, can we create an experience where you can simply say to an AI agent, I need to start building a compensation structure. I need to build a compensation structure for my company. That's just the prompt that it needs. And then it guides you through. Okay, to do that, first, let's build the job description. Okay, let's start building the job description. You don't have to build it. It'll give you, here's the job description for AI folks.
Next.
Here's the job description for software engineering. And at each step of the way, it's hand holding you to finally get to a state where you have compensation structures done. So even like Funny, you and me, or even Sid, any one of us, with less than regular expertise of that HR domain, eventually we are also able to go through the workflow and get something up and running in terms of comp structure. Versus today, that takes like a really deep knowledge or learning of how all of these things work. Of course, we won't be able to do it as well as all the HR professionals here, but the idea is you at least get some working model through that workflow.
And
So it's a co-pilot for the HRs. I'm sure they'll have some knowledge, but you can use the agentic AI that you guys are building, talk to it, build the entire flow with minimal knowledge or minimal to
Yes.
like medium knowledge.
Yes. Yes. And the agent is not like not just one agent that's doing it, right? These are like multiple agents running behind the scenes. One agent is just prompting you to do these things. There are other agents that are specifically expert at creating job descriptions. There are other agents that are expert at understanding the market data. There's another agent that's an expert at understanding your internal data. There's another agent that's a collecting all that data is really good at analyzing this data. So now you're thinking like there's multiple agents working through to get you just first output, second output. But that's the whole like idea and the architecture. Like, can you have that and resolve one workflow with these multiple agents?
So, what is the underlying? What model is it based on? Like, do you use OpenAI or any other models, LLMs, or?
Yeah. Sid, we are still building it, still in initial phases. So we don't know which one is the right one or which one is the perfect one to go through it. We have some philosophies as to how we will achieve it. Things like if we know that it is PII information, something that's not to be shared with any third party, we will end up using models that are open source that we can host on the cloud of the enterprise itself. So keep that data inside, not send it to any third party vendor for training and things like that. So those are like design principles that we will use. For others, if there's a question that needs to be understood and the question usually doesn't have any PI information, use whatever is best in that scenario. It could be OpenAI. It does a really good job at understanding what the question is and finding out what's the intent is and things like that. So that's like the general philosophy. We've played around with a couple of models. We've played around with Llama. We've played around with Mistral and then OpenAI GPT as well. And there's things that we will do. I think we'll end up using a mixture of different models for different use cases.
And
Yes.
what's the best in your perspective based on your research?
You mean like the best model?
Model out there? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible to answer what's the best model. It's just purely about what kind of use case are you
Use
trying
case.
to address. I wish I could give an answer there, but I don't think I have an answer like what's the best out there. I know like Cursor is doing really well when it comes to code copilot. They've done an excellent job there. Claude's one that's doing an excellent job as well in terms of analyzing files. So it just depends on like what use case. The narrower what we've seen is the narrower we get on the use case, the more we can compare different models together. The broader we get, it just gets very hard to compare.
Yeah, and it also is that like some models are good at broader level use cases, some are good at narrow niche use cases, right? So
Yes.
I think that's where you pick and choose which model is best for the use
Yes.
cases which you're training it for.
Yeah.
And in this case, basically, it's narrower, right? Because you need the agent to be specifically focused on one or few of the topics, and we need the agent to probably give more granular but accurate details to the customers.
Absolutely. And you also have to figure out, do you give how much independence do you give to the agent or the bot also? Do you just give them all the data and let them figure out and give an answer? Or do you provide them with, the set of answers? Okay, these are the only possible answers that are possible. You pick out the best one. It just the accuracy and depends so much on how much work you're doing beforehand. So the model, what is the model really good at identifying that and then doing the rest of the work without the model? I think that's equally important. What I've seen is the knee-jerk reaction is the model will do everything for us. Just give it the data and magically the output will be there. But in practicality, that hasn't worked really well. So it's always like, you know, creating really good engineering infrastructure as well, vector databases, powerful APIs that the agent can leverage. You have to give them like lots of helping hands to make them more accurate and relevant.
Makes sense. Actually, I want to again go back to the customers, right? I know you guys went through a strong journey of talking to the customers, understanding the pain point, and starting to build the products, adding AI components to that, etc. Can you share us probably like one or two examples of how the customers are starting to use it or exploring some stories of them using
Yeah.
it and then giving the feedback? Any details?
One of our partners who's a fractional HR leader, his clients usually have been like 50 to 100 employee count companies and addressing them, creating comp structure for them. By the way, for those in the audience that don't know fractional HR, these are leaders who are not full time within the company, but they are almost like a consultant who are addressing or like are the HR for multiple companies essentially. And so what in their vested interest is that they should be able to get more and more clients and finish the task quicker and quicker. The least amount of time it takes, the more clients they can onboard, the better their business is, right? And so what we've been doing is we've been partnering with these fractional leaders to address our small companies. And what they've found is if they use our product, they're able to create comp structure depending, of course, on the size. They've brought it down from weeks to literally minutes, bringing it down to that level. So one of our fractional partners, and this is quoted from them, says, I was able to bring it down to 15 minutes. Now, I don't believe them. 15 minutes, but of course, it was like, I think 50 to 60 employees. But even that, this is 15 minutes from like weeks of work. But even if like I'm conservative enough, even if it's an hour, it's a huge win for us. And so that's like the kind of improvement and productivity gain that we want to bring to the HR space. And this is like accuracy as well. You're able to visualize better. These are accurate things that are getting created.
No, that makes sense. Lovely, right? Because that's the core problem, especially for these companies. Because if they're working with multiple customers from their angle, then they don't have to spend like hours or probably weeks to understand each of the companies, set things like that, and not just for setting it up. I guess like if I think more, even maintaining it, because
Yes.
your employees might change. Historically, it might be difficult to keep all the knowledge. But what I'm anticipating is here, you're training the agent for that specific company, which means once you come back, the agent probably has some of that knowledge, which you can use to like continually update.
Yes, that's absolutely it, right? Like once you've interacted and you've learned in a certain organization as an agent, and let's say we do that for multiple organizations, now you start to generate a certain intelligence within your organization, which will be our moat essentially. Is we've done this across different organization sizes. We know the best practices. So now they are learning themselves as well because they've seen what works, what doesn't work, what was a good comp structure, bad comp structure in different industries, in different types of organization, in different verticals. And that becomes a learning for our own company and our own agents to now perform better and give better accurate compensation structure.
That makes sense. No, thanks for walking through the examples. This is lovely to hear the full circle of the story, right? Thinking of the problem, like trying to implement something, going back and forth, gathering that feedback, and then eventually taking it to customers and actually solving that problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's been, I think, going back to your point of like the highs in a startup are when you see these coming through, then you hear your customers say that this is the benefit I got out of it, this is how I improved my productivity, this is how it improved my scale. And on that example, by the way, that fractional partner who was doing like 50 to 100 employees and now just onboarded like 350 plus client, and this is the first time in their life that they've done it. I mean, first time in the life of their fractional journey that they've been able to take on such a big customer just with like one or two employees, which they wouldn't have done it before because we are able to bring that efficiency at that scale as well.
So is it actually available to everybody now, or do they have to go through anything to sign up for accessing this?
Yeah, people can actually sign up, but in order to get access, we are still in beta. We are
Okay.
still onboarding customers. We are picking them based on their employee count. Will it work for them? Will it not work for them? Is it suited for them? So just trying to understand their context and selectively bringing people in. It's not invite based, but it's definitely we'll take the call. They can sign up, and then we'll understand their context and make sure that it really addresses their problem rather than just using it. Hopefully next year will be public.
All the very best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. This is great, Autumn. So I want to take a step back, right? In terms of AI in general, I know AI has been transforming like multiple industries beyond tech. So where do you think like Aura can create the biggest impact? And could be HR for now, but how do you see the overall vision?
And that's creating a dent. Yeah, that's every day you are just also in the weeds. You don't think about that much, but I'll try to formulate as much as I can. I think generally AI can has this potential of definitely bringing radical productivity gains for everyone who's using AI. And you can name a person with a specific role, and then you can imagine a parallel bot or an agent who's doing that job and even better. And what better way to visualize that than the V Robo event that happened with Tesla, right? You have robots that are dancing, that are taking up bartending jobs, cars that are driving you around without a chauffeur. I mean, that's essentially what the future I feel like is going to be. Mundane tasks, repetitive tasks are going to be done by the bot itself. So I think generally that's where AI is headed. What that means for us as humans is that means we have more time on our hands. Now one could argue it could go either way. There's a phrase in Hindi that says "Khali dimag shaitan ka ghar." I don't know if you've heard of that phrase or
Yeah.
not, but essentially an empty brain is a devil's nest, right? And so it could go that way too. Too much time on our hands, and we could go that way, or it could be constructive as well. We have time to do certain important things in our life, spend more time with friends and spend more time with family, or maybe do bigger, better things than a mundane task. So I think generally AI would enable us to do that. In terms of Aura, I think the vision is very, very similar to that. With our hope is that, see, like HR function, and I have so much empathy for them now. Like I've talked to them for like last 7, 8 months. They are the ones who are in between this C-suite leadership and the business and the employees, and they're trying to make sure that all the parties are happy. The office of CFO is happy because we are spending the right amount of money on people. The people are happy so they can getting the most out of the amount they are putting into the company. They're getting the best compensation, but it's always a fine balance, and it's hard to get that fine balance. And they have to do lots and lots of work to even get to that state, and that state is everyone is just slightly unhappy state. So I think if we can help HR leaders get you know productive, get more data driven, get more say in the organization, say this is the decision I took and this is the data backing that decision, and it took them, instead of weeks and months, took them 15, 20 minutes to do it. That will be a massive game changer for Aura. Again, now they have time on their hands that they can use to be more strategic, think of more improvements that they can do within the organization. Instead of spending time just analyzing stuff, they can now spend on more strategic things that they want to address in the organization, bring more transparency, and then that's where we see like HR with Aura headed to, more time given back to them and more transparency given.
I could totally relate that to my company or my previous companies as well, right? Because employees probably have a different perspective of the benefits that they want. Companies have a
Yes,
different perspective of the benefits that they want to give.
absolutely.
And if it's not balanced, then either employees are unsatisfied or the employees are unsatisfied, even though they might be thinking that they're spending a lot on the benefits.
Oh
It's never
yeah.
enough for the employees, right?
Well,
It's always
and
one.
that's just benefits. Imagine the base pay. Imagine the equity. I mean, everywhere, and it gets even more complicated, by the way, at executive level. Now you have to have conversation at the executive. What's their pay going to look like? How did you even figure out that they should be getting that amount of bonus or that amount of equity? I think it's a very data driven problem, and it's also very emotionally driven problem. And so having that data to back up your claims and having that confidence of accuracy is so important, because that essentially will define where the conversation goes with the employees or with the executive.
So currently, the HR solutions out there which are already existing, right? So is the hypothesis that they're essentially showing data just for those companies, and they're not basically showing data for these HR leaders to kind of do this assumption or make this analysis?
Yeah, I think there are certain companies that are showing the data from one perspective. Things like, let's say, just the payroll data. They can very well show, okay, this is what we are paying, this is what we should pay. There are other systems that are really good at forecasting and planning the workforce. There are other systems that are really good at managing the equity and showing you that perspective. So there are some like systems that are really good at doing certain things. Where Aura comes in is when you have to bridge and connect all those systems together and make a holistic people decision. That's where our unique value proposition is. To just give you an example, right? Imagine there's a company who wants to expand. They have offices in India, they have offices in Colombia. And now you're trying to figure out, okay, I need to hire an AI team. Where should I expand my AI team? Should I expand it in India? Should I expand it in Colombia, for example? And you have offices at both those locations. Now, the first thing that you look at, okay, what's my budget like? Compensation. Okay, the compensation is pretty similar, India and Colombia, but it doesn't stop there. Then you're looking at, okay, what's my time to hire for these roles? And time to hire now is in a different system altogether. That's the ATS system. Payroll was in a different system. Now you're looking at, okay, what does the market is saying that right now, what's the compensation in the market like? What the compensation I can pay? Those are in different system. Equity, different system. What's the performance has been in India versus Colombia for employees that have like AI expertise? That data
Correct.
is also sitting in your system somewhere.
So essentially, you're saying that there are solutions, but all of these are in different maybe products, and there is no way all of the data is connected together. So you're essentially saying this could your product could be a place which connects all of the data and gives better insights, productivity, and so on and so forth, right?
Absolutely. That is one of our products. Yeah, right now the way like all of these things happen is you take all of that data, put in Excel sheets, and spend weeks
Weeks, yeah,
just
analyzing
analyzing the
the data.
data and hire HR analysts to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know this is a completely, at least, different space for us to understand. And I know like a lot goes into hiring people, deciding what the pay they get, and all of these things, right? And especially when it's a smaller company, you don't have all the resources to all of these, and it might take a lot of time for people to figure things out. And yeah, I want to just switch gears and move to another question here, right? So it's obviously not that easy for people to come out there of their regular job and become a founder, right? So for
Yeah.
anybody who's watching this and wants to take that next leap or the next step or go ahead and start their own company,
Yeah.
what would be one advice you would give them?
I think my biggest advice would be to find an advisor or a sounding board. It could be one person, it could be two people that have done the journey before. I think that is a massive, massive help. Even if that person has never worked in a corporate life, doesn't matter. But they've run a startup, gone from 0 to 1, they've built a successful company, they've exited. I think having that person and talking to them, getting their opinion, that I feel is the biggest advice that I can give to anyone who's planning to start anywhere. There's there are just so many things that are unknown, especially to a first time founder. When you're working in your corporate life, there's so many opinions out there. Oh, you should do a side project and that will become a startup. Oh, you should not do a side project. It will never become a startup. And then you should maybe read these books. That will help you become the startup founder. Or maybe you should. Not saying all of that are not valid. Everything is really good advice. But I think everything trumps having that advisor with you who's giving you honest and direct help as to how you can get started, how you can get it.
And like, how do you find these advisors? Is it more cold emailing or cold messaging people on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Well, I don't
And
know. Maybe that works.
how hard was it to get your advisor?
At this point, I feel like I can't say anything like that's impossible. I think it's just a game of probability at this point. So yes, you can cold reach out. The probabilities are low. It might take like more for time. Me, for example, I started off with just trying to understand the problem that I felt like, yeah, this is a good enough problem, aligns with how I think, aligns with what I'm motivated about in life to solve. And I want to solve this problem. And so I went about, okay, to solve this problem, here's the engineering mind I need to put into it, but there's also a business mind I need to put into it. And so I started thinking about who can I go to for business advice in my network? There are people in your network. It could be they've done a side business, could be they've done a tech company, just talk to them. Or maybe there's a business meetup that's happening. Go and put yourself out there and seek learning and advice and be curious. I think that's what helped me. I went on one such occasion to one of my friends I knew had built a startup and just talked to him for advice. And turns out, like, that was very helpful. It helped me understand how to think about go to market, helped me understand how to size the market, things that I'd not thought of before. And then eventually ended up with him introducing me to the co-founder, which I didn't know would end up being my co-founder, but they connected us together like, hey, by the way, both of you are working on the same problem. It's in the same market. You're just attacking it from different vantage points. Why don't you work together and see if it clicks? And then we worked together for like 3 to 4 months and decided, yeah, this is like working out well. Let's build a company together in this problem area.
That's exciting. Awesome, Gautam. This is great. Thank you so much for talking through and answering all of our questions. One last thing that we ask our guests before we end the podcast is any recommendations on books or podcasts that you have listened to in the past that probably changed your thought process, helped
Yeah.
you?
I would start with maybe the one that I read early on in my life is 10 years ago. There's a book called Maverick by Ricardo Semler that completely changed my perspective on how organizations should be run or can be run rather. And it's a really cool book about a Brazilian entrepreneur who has a family business run by his father and he wants to completely change it, how it's run. And that changes the trajectory of the company, not without its downs, of course. but how he brings that change. And is one person I really look up to. Really amazing book. I think in that note as well, now going specific into software, I think Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, I think that's a really good book. Generally, I like reading about biographies of people who've done, great things. Alex Ferguson, building how to build high performing teams, essentially learned a ton from that. Steve Jobs, how to think about product, market, and then Elon Musk, of course. I follow him as well, and just to understand what his mindset is. There's always something that you can learn from everyone. So I think generally those are the books. For the one book that actually helped me a lot to understand the journey of products was Crossing the Chasm. I think that's definitely one book that's like product management 101. I think that's recommended, but I'm not from product, so I didn't know about it, but I read it based on a recommendation of my professor. And that was a really, really good book. I really enjoyed learning through it and gives you like at least a blueprint of how to think about products. Yeah, there's other books, lots of other books. I'm happy to share that, but I think those are top of mind that's coming to me right now.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely add them in the description. I can reach out to you and then add the links.
Yeah.
This is great, Gautam. Again, thank you so much for taking time and spending time with us and answering all the questions that we had.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, the podcast that I would recommend is Everything Product. And
Thank you.
I think this week in startups was really good. It helped me a lot in my journey on how to think of startups. I think that's a really good one as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Funny
you.
said, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all ours.